It's November, it's almost Thanksgiving. I might do another video next week before Thanksgiving, but if I don't by then, happy Thanksgiving almost. Today I'm not going to do exercises except for some breathing. This is all about sharing information. I'm not giving advice. I am sharing resources and information. And it all has to do with immunity, which is very relevant at this time. So let's start with the sun. We all know about vitamin D and the sun. Unfortunately, there's a lot of controversy and people are scared to go in the sun. But the danger only comes if you overdo it. So if you're in the sun 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, try to expose as much of your body as you can. Now in the winter and the fall, the sun is farther away, so it doesn't feel as hot. So it feels really nice and warming. In the summer, the sun is closer, so it's more dangerous. So then you go down to like maybe 15 minutes early in the morning. Whereas now you could do it at any time of day, and you're getting the ultraviolet B rays. Those are the ones that make vitamin D. And they have done a lot of studies that show if you have higher levels of vitamin D, which is at least about 40, according to the research, because I think they say, oh, if you're around 30, you're okay, but that's debatable according to the research. You're at less risk for infection, so that's good to know. Then I also wanted to share the name of this book. It's called The Salt Fix. Very easy name to remember, The Salt Fix. And there's a new book by the same author, and I'll tell you his name in a second. It's also called The Immunity Fix. And the doctor's name is James D. Nicolantonio, which is a very long name. So that's why I said if you just go do a internet search for The Salt Fix or The Immunity Fix, you'll see his name. And there's over 70 references in this book, so it's well researched. It's based on good scientific evidence. And he explains why salt is so important and necessary. And he also explains why it's the wrong white powder that doesn't cause hypertension or high blood pressure. So what actually causes hypertension is actually sugar. So that's the other white powder. So in general, well, sugar, white sugar, is made up of glucose and fructose. We need glucose, but our liver actually makes as much glucose as we need. So it's not something we would consider essential to eat. So what happens when you eat a lot of sugar, and remember all carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars, although the fructose is metabolized a little differently than glucose, but nonetheless, any sugar causes an insulin response. So what happens is when insulin goes up, and the way that many Americans eat, but not everybody, is that we eat constantly throughout the day. We only stop when we're asleep, and some people don't even stop then. But so that every meal, that every time we eat, and there's any type of a carbohydrate, which would be any type of like a bread, a noodle, a grain, all those make your insulin go up, and then it stays up. And then insulin has an effect on the kidneys, and it actually tells the kidneys to hold on to water. So that's why when people switch and they start to eat differently and they get rid of a lot of the carbohydrates, they lose a lot of water, which is why they don't feel good, because in the water are all the minerals we need. So that's what actually happens. So it's related to this constant elevated, it's called hyperinsulinemia. So emia is meaning in the blood. So your insulin is up all the time. So one strategy that actually does help your immunity is what they call time restricted eating, where you, let's say you eat dinner at 7 and then you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. So actually you haven't eaten for 12 hours. So that's great. So you start there and then you think, well, I'm going to wait a little later to eat breakfast, or I'm going to eat dinner a little earlier. However, so instead of 12 hours, then it becomes what? 13 hours. And then from there, you could just go on to a good 14 hours before you eat again. So that's why it's called time restricted eating, because you're not eating at all for 14 hours. And what happens is that really allows your whole body to reset. It allows your metabolism to reset, your immune system to reset. And if you're really interested, I have a really good YouTube podcast with this doctor, and the other doctor is Dr. Ken Berry, Berry. Dr. Ken, Berry, and they recently did one on immunity and explains about why salt is important in your gut and how your gut is the first line of defense against any bacteria or virus. And the other area that I wanted to talk about is, when they talk about this, they talk about magnesium, and I'm just showing, these are just ionic formulas. I'm not advising or recommending, but none of us, if we just eat the food, is not in the food. So most of us don't have enough magnesium. I have a little selenium. I just put a few drops in my water, and there's different brands of it. So I'm not selling any brands or anything like that. But all these things are really important for your immunity. And the other thing they talk about is they talk about different types of animal foods, and they definitely recommend, because they've, of course, based on research, shown that pastured eggs, so it has to say pastured on it, which means free range is the next best thing, but it just means that chickens they're moving around and they're eating all kinds of things. They're not cooped up in a confined space and only fed, let's say, corn, okay? So pastured eggs also have a lot of vitamin D in them, especially the yolk. The yolk is what you need. And you should not be concerned about the cholesterol in there, because again, it all comes back to insulin. You want to keep your insulin down and don't worry about the cholesterol. I have a lot of references to back up that statement. Cholesterol we actually need is essential for our health. So that's one area where you can get D other than the sun, and also of course supplementation, but that's another story. Some of the supplements aren't as good as they say they are. But locally, I found a farm. It's just in northern New Mexico. It's called C4 Farms. I have no disclosures here as far as conflict of interest. I don't get any money from them, but I do buy their meat because they are a regenerative farm. And regenerative farms, they have grass-fed beef, supposedly exclusively grass-fed. And they're higher in the omega-3s, which is what you always hear you get from fish. You also can get it from grass-fed beef. So this is a local farm, and I do support them. They have more omega-3s. So here, to put it in a nutshell, the omega-6 is what you get from the vegetable oils, which are also called industrial seed oils. They are very bad for your health. Unlike what you hear, they're heart healthy. No, they are pro-inflammatory, and this has become critical. They are pro-inflammatory, and they affect your immune system, because if you're already in a state of inflammation and you start to get sick, it's just going to get worse from there. So you want to get those out of the picture. Go with like whole oils that, I mean, if you do cook in oil, for example, the ones that are more stable because they do not oxidize are the saturated fat. If you're cooking that way, like in a pan, you don't have to. You can just bake, or you can use a pressure cooker. But using the seed oils like corn oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, all those are very bad for your health. They're pro-inflammatory because it's very high omega-6, and they're also very unstable because they oxidize. So anyway, I recommend going for any type of grass-fed beef. I also recommend that you read ingredients that I need. These are foods that I had in my pantry, or have, because someone else in the house eats them. I don't touch them. Here, the ingredients are so big on here. The noodles, modified tapioca starch, that's a high carbohydrate. Wheat gluten, another one. Soybean oil, there you go, soybean oil, high in omega-6 and highly oxidized when you cook with it. More soy in the soup part of it. Sugar. So this is what's called processed. So you don't want to eat processed foods. This tortillas. Okay, again with the gluten. There's been so much research on gluten. I don't eat gluten. I stopped many years ago. I do not miss it whatsoever. But again, this has canola oil in it, and soybean oil in it, and safflower oil in it. So all wheat products not only have the wheat and the gluten, which is very problematic, and I didn't know it was problematic. I ate it my whole life until my health changed. Then I realized, oh, it's problematic, so it was a little too late. But not only does it have that, it has the vegetable oils in it. So that's why I said processed, no. The cereals, the same thing, very high carbohydrate. All carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. So what you have to understand is when you eat a mixed meal that has a lot of carbohydrates, starches, noodles, and all that, first of all, your body can't digest everything at once. So you're not even going to absorb most of the essential nutrients, which come from the fat of the meat, and you don't need lean meat. You need fat meat because guess what? Fat-soluble vitamins are in the fat of the meat. So you need fatty meat. If you eat fatty meat along with whatever, vegetable salad, whatever, you'll be so full you won't even be interested in the starches. But then, so the other side of that is that starches burn like tinder. So that's why you're hungry when you eat a mixed meal. You need to eat a little more, rebalancing the meals with more fat and protein. Now that's my opinion. I'm not giving any type of advice, but my opinion is based on the research that I've studied extensively, as well as, again, going back, it's all in line with a Paleolithic or a paleo type of approach to nutrition and sustenance. So like I said, I'm not giving any specific type of a diet. I'm just giving information about minerals and gut health and absorption and things that you can research on your own and confirm, and of course speak with your doctor. Some doctors do know more about nutrition than other doctors. And I mean, I know I had one doctor say, well, stop eating salt or cut back on your salt or whatever in reference to blood pressure. So that particular person didn't understand anything in that book that I just shared with you. So anyway, that's the information for today. Again, let me just reiterate, I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling anybody what to eat or not to eat. I'm sharing information. And it's really up to every individual to do their own research, see what works for them, talk to a doctor or a nutritionist if you're changing your diet. Get tested if you want to see if you're low in any of these things, even though most people are low in magnesium. It's very hard to get it from the vegetables that we eat because the soil, it has been greatly depleted from all the farming. So these things are kind of established and well known. So basically it's up to you guys. But to end on a fun note, I'm going to blow balloons. Hey, go get some balloons. I don't even know where I put them. Or if we don't have balloons, hey, we have some bubbles. So let's blow bubbles. There we go. And just remember, we can all boost our immunity through healthy habits like picking clean food, or not, I should say unprocessed food. So just make all your own food. Cut back on sugar, cut back on seed oils, get sun. And we have sun in New Mexico, and that's a blessing. Do some nice fresh air exercise, of course. Hey, I even heard that if you could take a cold shower just for start with 10 seconds and then go to 30 seconds and just do quick breathing because it feels cold and you're going, whoo, 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 and just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you can turn on the warm water if you need to. And then you build up to 30 seconds. That's really good for your health and your immunity also. So I do all those things. And I hope you can do some of those things too. I miss working with you in person. Hope to see you soon. Hope I didn't talk too much.